I'd like to take this opportunity today to speak about the newly declassified pictures and videos shared by the department today that depict the PLA's sharp increase in coercive and risky operational behavior in the East and South China Seas. And in particular, I'd also like to discuss why it represents such a significant concern. Now, as many of you know, every year for over 20 years, the Department of Defense has released what we call the China Military Power Report, or the CMPR. It's an important document because it's the department's authoritative public assessment of the PLA and the role it plays in helping to realize Beijing's broader ambitions. This year's report will be out soon, and taken together with today's announcements, it represents the department's most comprehensive depiction to date of this highly concerning behavior by the PLA. While last year's CMPR noted that PLA fighter jets were increasingly engaging in coercive and risky operational behavior, this year's CMPR provides a much clearer estimate of that disturbing trend. Specifically, since the fall of 2021, we have seen more than 180 such incidents, more in the past 2 years than in the decade before that. That's nearly 200 cases where PLA operators have performed reckless maneuvers, or discharged chaff, or shot off flares, or approached too rapidly or too close to U.S. aircraft, all as part of trying to interfere with the ability of U.S. forces to operate safely in places where we and every country in the world have every right to be under international law. And when you take into account cases of coercive and risky PLA intercepts against other states, the number increases to nearly 300 cases against U.S., ally, and partner aircraft over the last 2 years. Now let me take a moment to explain why this matters so much from our perspective. For decades, the United States has operated in the region safely, responsibly, and in accordance with international law, and we will continue to do so. Our allies and partners welcome our military presence because it advances our shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific. This vision, which Secretary Austin described at the Shangri-La Dialogue this year, is characterized by respect for sovereignty, adherence to international law, belief in transparency and openness, freedom of commerce and navigation, equal rights for all states, and the resolution of disputes through peaceful means, not through coercion or conquest. And it's the peace and stability extending from this security environment that has provided the foundation for the region's shared prosperity. By contrast, the PLA's coercive and risky behavior, like the kind the department is highlighting today, seeks to intimidate and coerce members of the international community into giving up their rights under international law. It directly contradicts what the region wants for itself, and it can put lives at risk, the lives of our service members, the lives of our allies and partners' service members, and even the lives of PLA operators. The examples released by the department today may each look different, whether in terms of the distance between the lawfully operating U.S. asset and the PLA asset engaged in coercive and risky behavior, or in terms of how exactly the PLA asset behaves in any given interaction. But all of these examples we've released today underscore the coercive intent of the PLA by engaging in these behaviors, particularly in international airspace. And the bottom line is that, in many cases, this type of operational behavior can cause accidents, and dangerous accidents can lead to inadvertent conflict. In January of this year, for example, an American aircraft was flying in the skies above the South China Sea, safely, responsibly, and in accordance with international law, and hundreds of miles from land. A PLA jet fighter approached our asset at a speed of hundreds of miles per hour, clearly armed, and closing to just 30 feet away. In fact, once it was there, the PLA fighter jet lingered at that narrow proximity for more than 15 minutes. Just weeks before, INDOPACOM had publicly released a video of a similar incident. And for the PLA to engage in this coercive and risky behavior so soon after that incident, indeed for PLA operators to continue this behavior at all, points to what this year's CMPR will describe as, and I'm quoting directly here, a centralized and concerted campaign. Let me say that again. A centralized and concerted campaign to perform these risky behaviors in order to coerce a change in lawful U.S. operational activity and that of U.S. allies and partners. We've also witnessed PLA pilots deliberately interfere with and create turbulence for U.S. operators by flying in front of U.S. aircraft at close distances. Photos from an incident in January 2022 show a PLA fighter jet crossing in front of a lawfully operating U.S. asset at a distance of just 100 yards, forcing the U.S. pilot to fly through the PLA's wake. Again, this is at speeds of hundreds of miles an hour and at an altitude of tens of thousands of feet. And this is not a one-off occurrence. In May of this year, as many of you know, INDOPACOM released a video of a PLA aircraft speeding along a U.S. aircraft before cutting in front of it. You can even see the physical effects of the resulting turbulence on the aircraft and the crew. This is yet another disturbing sign of the PLA's coercive and risky operational behavior at a time when the PRC has declined our invitations to open lines of military-to-military communication at the senior-most levels. These images and videos speak for themselves. U.S. planes are operating safely, responsibly, and in accordance with international law. Indeed, the skill and professionalism of American service members should not be the only thing standing between PLA fighter pilots and a dangerous, even fatal accident. Yet, time after time, that is exactly what has prevented a disaster in the East and South China Seas. As Secretary Austin has said on numerous occasions, the PRC can and must end this behavior, full stop. For our part, the Department will continue to raise awareness about the dangers of the PLA's coercive and risky operational behavior. We will also continue to seek open lines of military-to-military communication with the PLA at multiple levels, including the senior-most level, because we believe these channels are crucial for preventing competition from inadvertently veering into conflict. Finally, the United States will not be deterred or coerced. We will continue to fly, sail, and operate safely and responsibly wherever international law allows. Our forces have helped sustain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific for decades, and we will continue to do so every day. So I hope today's announcement can help increase understanding here in Washington, across the Indo-Pacific, and around the world about why the PLA's operational behavior is so concerning. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Admiral Aquilino before we open it up to questions.
Thanks, Dr. Ratner. Sabrina, good to see you. Thanks for inviting me to be here today. And to all of you in the audience, I've spoken to many of you, but not all of you, so I'm honored to be here, and I thank you for participating. Eli talked about the perspective and the challenges that exist as it applies to the PRC activity described in the report. I'm here to talk about these concerns from my perspective as the commander of U.S. INDOPACOM. First, let me start by stating that the service members of INDOPACOM, our uniform members, our civilian warriors, every day operate in order to prevent conflict. That is, prevent conflict, not provoke it. Now, we do that in order to execute our functions and our missions, and that is to maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific. That free and open Indo-Pacific enables peace, prosperity, and stability for all the nations in the region. And we've done that for 8 decades. INDOPACOM deters conflict by being ready every day, whether it's our warfighting capabilities, our operations, our relationships with our allies and partners, and our exercises. Let me point out that our joint force is highly trained, disciplined, and professional. Our air operations are planned, rehearsed, and executed safely every day. As the Joint Force Commander, I'm most concerned about the potential for accidents, the way Dr. Ratner explained them. And those accidents could lead to miscalculation. We must prevent these from happening in the theater. So let me be clear. Intercepts happen every day around the world. The vast majority are conducted safely and without incident. And there's no reasons for the intercepts with the PRC in the Indo-Pacific region to be any different. I'm here today because it's the operational commander's #1 responsibility to ensure the safety of our service members, and it's a responsibility I take very seriously. So highlighting these behaviors and ensuring that we can prevent them is a top priority. I want to thank you again for allowing me to be here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Great. Just a quick note at the top, I'd ask that you keep your questions to this topic, and then we'll brief after for news of day. So with that, I'll go to AP, Tara Kopp.
Thanks for doing this. Admiral Aquilino, given the new conflict in the Middle East, how concerned are you that you do not or will not have the assets you need, given that there's now 2 carriers monitoring the Med? How are you able to continue to deter China if all of these assets need to go into potentially another central command conflict? And then for Dr. Ratner, given that there is also now a second conflict, have you been able to speak to any of your partners or allies about increasing production to get more 155, since now both Israel and Ukraine will need them?
So thanks. Let me start. First, it is incredibly sad to watch the actions of the terrorists in the Middle East. It's also sad to watch the illegitimate, illegal war in Ukraine that's been initiated by the Russians. As it applies to the Indo-Pacific and my responsibilities, what I'll tell you is I haven't had one piece of equipment or force structure depart. The United States is a global power, and that means we can deliver effects and execute our deterrence responsibilities across the globe. I don't think any other nation can do that at this time, but the United States can. Oh, by the way, the Indo-Pacific Command has 2 aircraft carriers right now at sea as well, along with a large portion of the joint force executing deterrence missions in my theater.
And maybe I'll just follow up. I'm going to stay away from the questions about issues related to other theaters and discussions with our allies and partners. But what I will say about this question of what does the events in other parts of the world mean for our policy and strategy in the Indo-Pacific and as it relates to the PRC, which is that, look, we have a 2022 National Defense Strategy, which has described the PRC as the department's pacing challenge. That remains true today. We have a presidential budget request for the department that reflects that strategy, a strategy-driven budget. And we have been, in addition to those investments, developing new operational concepts relevant to the region. We have been developing a more mobile, distributed, lethal, and resilient force posture in the Indo-Pacific. We've had a banner year in that regard over the last 12 months, a lot of great work in concert with Indo-PACOM from Japan, the Philippines, down through Australia. And in the meantime, we have been deepening our alliances and partnerships in the region, and to a T, our key alliances and partnerships in the region are stronger than they have ever been. As a result of that activity, you have likely heard department leaders say repeatedly, we believe deterrence is real and deterrence is strong, and we're doing everything we can to keep it that way.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, though, is there a concern in the region that while having to engage in both Ukraine and Israel, there might be a reduced capability to meet whatever threat is faced by those same countries by China?
Like I said, we have been taking a number of steps to strengthen our commitment to the region, strengthen our deterrent to the region, and we will continue to do that.
Patrice, Reuters?
Admiral, just similarly on that, have you seen any indications or any intel that the Chinese are looking at this period of not distraction, but just focus on the Middle East and Europe as an opening for a potential not invasion of Taiwan, but operations against the island? And Eli, how many of these 180 that you described are unsafe and or unprofessional? Because that's been the standard by which we have measured dangerous behavior. So coercive and risky seems subjective, whereas unsafe and unprofessional is what we're used to as sort of a metric for what is dangerous and isn't.
Yeah, first, thanks. I'm certainly not going to discuss any intel that I've seen. What I'll say is historically, certainly all nations look at what's going on in the geopolitical space, in the military space, and I would expect there to be lessons learned. Indo-PACOM prepares every day to ensure we execute both of the missions the Secretary gave me. Number one, to prevent conflict in the Indo-Pacific. And number two, if mission one fails, be prepared to fight and win. So those actions go on each and every day in Indo-PACOM, and we would expect all nations to be watching these actions and then determining how that best fits into their future ways. That said, my forces are ready today.
So just in response to your question, look, we have a very specific set of criteria that we use to articulate and describe particular behaviors. That is classified. It should remain classified, and what we are presenting today is a set of activities that we believe exhibit observable behavior and that we have cataloged along the lines that I have described. And look, I understand the desire for exactly how many of these, what's the exact number. One is too many. All right, that's our view here at the department. What we have provided and will be on the Pentagon website, if it's not up already, will be 15 specific incidences cataloging over this period from the fall of 2021 through today, the most recent case in September, and every one of these is one too many.
Great. I'm going to go to Janie.
Thank you, sir. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Putin summit will be held in Beijing. Also, North Korea and Russia's foreign ministers meeting in the Pyongyang tomorrow. How do you analyze the strength of military cooperation and solidarity between North Korea, China, and Russia?
Thank you. First, we watch very closely the cooperation and certainly the concern from Indo-PACOM is the statement of a no-limits relationship between the PRC and Russia, the inability to denounce bad actions globally, and their increased cooperation exercises, and we watch it very closely. So two authoritarian powers working that closely together is certainly concerning. Secondly, on North Korea and Russia, with the transfer of weapons and capabilities that you've seen and been written about in the media is also of concern. So the region is gotten more dangerous, and we watch very closely.
Why do you think China refuses military talks with the United States? Reason why?
Yeah, you're going to have to ask my counterparts in China. As I've been on the record before, I've asked to speak with my counterparts, the Eastern and Southern Theater commanders now, going on 2.5 years. I have yet to have one of those requests accepted, and I look forward to speaking to my counterpart. I think developing that relationship would be critical to maintaining the peace and stability in the region.
Great. Warren?
The incidents you're talking about focus on intercepts in the air. I was wondering, are you seeing related action or a series of incidents in the maritime domain and an increase in that trend? I know there have been some incidents and some videos shared by DOD and others. Is there a similar trend you're seeing on the water?
Yeah, maybe I'll take that first and then pass it over to Admiral Aquilino. Absolutely, yes. This is part of a broader pattern of PLA behavior throughout the region, throughout domains and throughout geographies, that we're seeing this behavior on the water, in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. We're seeing it against allies and partners, not just the United States. We're seeing it on land against our Indian partners. So this is part of a much broader picture. What we wanted to do today was focus on this particular set, provide some information and some data in this particular issue that we think is dangerous, and one that Secretary Austin has spoken about directly, publicly, and privately with allies and partners, and frankly privately with PRC counterparts when he's had the opportunity to do that. But Long, if you want to talk about the broader regional picture. Yeah, there's certainly incidents in the maritime that are concerning. We released one not long ago when the U.S. and Canada were transiting through the Taiwan Strait, and PLA ship cut directly in front of the United States ship. That's one example. There are more. I think the best I would say is if you look at what the Philippines have released most recently as it applies to utilizing fire hoses in an attempt at blocking their movement into Second Thomas Shoal, it's similar to the air domain.
Great. I'm going to go to Tom.
Admiral, is there any indication of communication between the U.S. and allied pilots and ship drivers and the Chinese? Or is it a one-way conversation or any conversation? And also, I know you can't get into intel, but is this being ordered by the highest levels of the Chinese government, or is this more a lower-level kind of military thing going on here?
Yeah, I'd go to what Dr. Ratner talked about as a part of the report. I think the report assesses that this is a part of a strategy by the PRC. So that's point one. Point two, the first thing we do at all points in the operational space is attempt to communicate to ensure both parties understand where are we, what are we doing, what's our intent, to ensure we can avoid any type of accident. That is always step one. Sometimes that communication happens, sometimes it doesn't. And there's I think there's video in some of those, or audio in the videos that articulate sometimes the responses that we get. There are expansive claims that are not in accordance with international law, but the United States always attempts, step one, to communicate and ensure we understand intent.
You say sometimes it's communications. Any sense, percentage, 20% of the time?
Yeah, I don't have the
Any
percentage.
sense?
I'm going to go to Courtney. I saw your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted a clarification on your answer to Idris, because I didn't understand. Are you saying that now it's classified whether something is unsafe or unprofessional?
No. What I was describing is the very specific criteria that we use around these, and some of the data is classified. In fact, what you are seeing today is the result of months and months of efforts to declassify this information and sanitize it for public release. So we don't think it's in our interest and in our national interest to get into very specific details about the nature of all of these incidents because of how our other countries may use that information. So we're not today prepared to go beyond the data which we're releasing here, but just to emphasize that we believe we're providing a significant amount of transparency into the event today.
Is that a policy that only relates to Indo-Pacific Command? Because I know for EUCOM, we've had Pat Ryder stand here at the podium and tell us that something that happened with the Russian aircraft was unsafe and unprofessional. So is that?
And we have done that on a case-by-case basis. The question here was about very specific summary data about all of the events, and we're not prepared to share that data today.
So just be clear that the 180 that you referenced that were, I think you said they were risky. Is that coercive? Risky and what? Coercive. Coercive. That is how I mean, just it's language that I think we've known for a long time, unsafe and unprofessional, and how that was a characterization that I think a lot of us are just familiar with, frankly. So I guess I'm having a hard time equating how to take that information that you're putting out today with how we have characterized these sorts of things in our reporting in the past. So are all of these things risky and coercive considered unsafe and unprofessional then as well?
I'm not going to get into additional labels.
Well, let me just say it. Let me take a shot at it, Courtney. I think what I would say is when you get to unsafe and unprofessional, that's really concerning behavior, right? People's lives are at risk. What we've seen since 2001 is a set of actions that have brought airplanes much closer together than are comfortable for those in the cockpit. In other words, flying off my wing at 15 feet for 45 minutes has too much of a chance to lead to an accident. We've seen an increase in those close intercepts and activities in very close proximity to our airplanes since the fall of 2001. A subset of those 180 have been unsafe, unprofessional.
Great. We're going to take one more question.
Sorry, we can provide you with an articulation of the criteria that was used for these events today. We'll do that.
Thank you. Yep. And I know our briefers have limited time, so I'm going to take one last question from Rio.
Yeah, thank you very much. The question to Dr. Ratner. Does the Pentagon encourage allies and partners to release the Chinese unsafe behavior to the public so that the public will get a better understanding of what the Chinese is doing?
I would say our position is that is their story to tell. Those are their sovereign decisions to make about releasing that information. I think from our perspective, we believe that transparency around this is important for better understanding about this behavior.
Yeah, I would say all those things you've heard about and publicized from other nations have been publicized from other nations. What I think they show is the linkage to what we're putting out today is this is not behavior just faced by the United States. This is behavior that many of our allies and partners are having to deal with in the region. And again, to Dr. Ratner's point, one accident is too many. We went through it in 2001, and certainly my intent as the operational commander is to do everything possible to ensure that we can protect our aircrew and that all nations should have the expectation of being able to operate safely in international airspace in the region. That's the rules-based international order that you hear us talk about so frequently.